Dear students, today we are going to learn a lesson from 10th Standard English course book, unit number 2.4, an epitome of courage. So students, please open your textbook, page number 62 of your English textbook. Okay? Did you open page number 62? Dear students, our today's lesson is 2.4, an epitome of courage. So let us understand the meaning of the title first. You know, the title is an epitome of courage. In this title, two words are important. The first word is epitome. What is the meaning of epitome? Epitome means a very fine example or a perfect example of something. And the meaning of the title is perfect example of courage. A very fine example of courage. So, this is the meaning of the title of this lesson. A very fine example of courage. In Marathi we can say धैर्याचे मूर्तिमंत उदाहरण. So under this title on page number 62, in bracket the paragraph of the introduction to the lesson is given. Introduction passage. So let's read and understand this passage first. It is only an introduction to this lesson. So pay attention to the first paragraph of the introduction. So here is the paragraph given us a short introduction about this lesson. So first of all, let us understand this paragraph. I am going to read this introduction passage. Listen carefully. We often tend to hide behind our weaknesses, disabilities, handicaps, or mourn over them our whole life through. Dr. Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest scientists of this century, did not do so. In spite of suffering from a very rare and dreaded disease, Dr. Hawking continued his research undaunted. His exemplary courage should inspire us to do our best even under trying circumstances. So, this is the first introduction paragraph which is given in bracket. So in the first line of this paragraph, the writer tells us about the general human tendency. So what is the general human tendency? In the first line you can find this answer. It is the general human tendency. It is the general human tendency that we tend to hide behind our weaknesses, disabilities, handicaps. We need something to hide ourselves. And that way, we refuse to accept the challenges in our lives. We do not come forward to accept the big challenges. So we go on avoiding the challenges and we give different reasons for that. reasons about our weaknesses, reasons about our disabilities, or reasons about our handicaps. So we give so many reasons to refuse our challenges. Okay. So it is the general human tendency. Dr. Stephen Hawking. Who was Dr. Stephen Hawking? He was the greatest scientist of this century. Dr. Stephen Hawking did not do so. Means he did not hide himself behind his weaknesses, behind his disabilities, behind his handicaps. In spite of suffering from a very rare and dreaded disease, Dr. Hawking continued his research undaunted. Means Dr. Stephen Hawking, suffering from a very rare and dreaded disease, means a very fearful disease. Friends, Dr. Hawking was suffering from a very dreaded disease, fearful disease, and still he did not hide himself behind that. आपल्या आजाराचा त्याने भाव केला नाही. He came forward in his life and he undaunted, means fearlessly he came forward and he continued his research work. He continued his research fearlessly. He showed an exemplary courage. Here, exemplary means worth of imitation and admirable. अनुकरणीय किंवा प्रेरणादायी उदाहरण त्यांनी दिलं. He showed an admirable courage, and that courage inspires us to do our best in our difficult situation, in the difficult circumstances also. So friends, in the life of Stephen Hawking, it should be an inspiration for us. डॉक्टर स्टीफन हॉकिंगचं जीवन हे नक्कीच आपल्याला प्रेरणादायी आहे. We should take inspiration from the life of Dr. Stephen Hawking, who continued his research in spite of rare and dreaded disease. So friends, this is the meaning of the first introductory paragraph. So from this first paragraph, tell me some answers. I am going to ask some questions on this passage. The first question is, what is the general human tendency? What is the general human tendency? Yes, exactly. The answer is, the general human tendency is to hide behind our weaknesses, disabilities, handicaps, and mourn over them, to refuse our challenges. Now tell me, who was Dr. Stephen Hawking? Or can you find out this answer from this passage? Who is Dr. Stephen Hawking? Okay, Dr. Stephen Hawking is one of the greatest scientists of this century. One of the greatest scientists of the century. Okay, and what was Dr. Stephen Hawking suffering from? Yes, the answer is, Dr. Stephen Hawking was suffering from a very rare and dreadful disease. Dreadful means a very fearful, भयानक आजाराने त्रस्त होते. So dear student, Now let us see the first paragraph of this lesson. So on the same page, page number 62, I am going to write the first para. Exactly 300 years after the death of the great scientist Galileo, Dr. Stephen Hawking was born in Oxford, London on the 8th day of January 1942. Little did his parents know that one day their little boy would be hailed as one of the greatest scientists of this century. Neither could anyone imagine that his mind would soar up into space like light. More importantly, none could predict that he would be the very epitome of courage. So friends, first of all, we know when and where Dr. Stephen Hawking born. So can you tell me when was Dr. Stephen Hawking born? The answer is in the first stanza, first paragraph. Find out this answer. When was Dr. Stephen Hawking born? Find out the answer from the same paragraph. When was Dr. Stephen Hawking born? Yes, exactly. Dr. Stephen Hawking born on the 8th day of January 1942. Another question for you. Where was Dr. Stephen Hawking born? Now the question is, where was he born? You can find the answer from the paragraph. Yes, Dr. Stephen Hawking was born in Oxford, London. Now friends, tell me one more thing. Did his parents know that their little child would become one of the greatest scientists of this century? Can you understand my question? One more. Did his parents know that their little child would become one of the greatest scientists of this century? And the answer is no. His parents did not know that their little child would become one of the greatest scientists of this century. And no one could imagine. His parents no one could imagine that he would become a very epitome of courage. एक धैर्याचं मूर्तिमंत उदाहरण होईल असं कोणालाच कल्पनाही नव्हती. Now one more question, another question for you. Can you name the greatest scientist 300 years before Hawking? Listen, who was the greatest scientist 300 years ago before Hawking? Yes, exactly, you are correct. He was Galileo. The name of the scientist was Galileo. And after the death of the great scientist Galileo, exactly 300 years after the death of greatest scientist Galileo, Dr. Stephen Hawking was born. Okay, this is the meaning of the first paragraph. So look into the second paragraph. Now I am going to read the second paragraph of this lesson. Courage is a wonderful thing. It is that quality which makes people not lose heart when faced with a great calamity. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Dr. Stephen Hawking, a living legend of cosmology, is the very personification of courage and hope. Except his mind, his whole body is bound to a wheelchair, thanks to a cruel quirk of fate. Yet, He is one of the greatest scientists of this century. Now, students, from this passage, from this paragraph, you have to find out some answers again. In this paragraph, the definition of the meaning of courage is given. The writer tells us what is courage. Can you tell me what is courage? What is courage? Yes, courage is a quality. Courage is a quality which makes people not lose heart when faced with a great calamity. Yes, courage is a quality which makes people not lose heart when faced with a great calamity. So this is the meaning and definition of courage. Also, here is a new word. The new word is here cosmology. Cosmology means study of origin and development of the universe. त्याला आपण मराठीमध्ये विश्वनिर्मिती शास्त्र असे म्हणतो. Now tell me, who was the living legend of cosmology? Who was the living legend of cosmology? And the answer is Dr. Stephen Hawking. Dr. Stephen Hawking was the living legend of cosmology, and Dr. Hawking was the very personification of courage and hope. धैर्य आणि आशावाद यांचं मूर्तिमंत रूप होते डॉक्टर हॉकिंग म्हणजे. का असं म्हटलंय? Because his whole body is bound to wheelchair. His whole body is bound to a wheelchair means he was unable to move. Only his mind was moving. Only his mind was free to move. His body could not move. His body could not move himself. He was bounded to a wheelchair. His body was bounded to a wheelchair, and that is a work of fate. Work of fate means unexpected change of destiny. So this shows the unexpected change of destiny in his life. अचानक त्याच्या जीवनामध्ये दैवाचा घाला झाला. अचानक अनपेक्षितपणे. So this shows the unexpected change of destiny in his life. It was a very cruel change in his life that his body was bounded to the wheelchair. बघा मित्रांनो, खुर्चीशिवाय तो अजिबात मूवमेंट करू शकत नव्हता. संपूर्ण शरीर त्याचं जखडून गेलं होतं. त्याला व्याधी झाली होती. फक्त त्याचं मन सोडलं तर तो एका जागेवर होता. He cannot move. He can move only his mind. Yet, in spite of this situation, असून सुद्धा he became one of the greatest scientists of this century. बघा, पाठीमागची कविता आपण बघितली होती. होप इज द थिंग विथ फेदर्स, 9वी मध्ये. तसंच आहे, सेम आशा होती. मात्र इन स्पाइट ऑफ दिस सिच्युएशन ही बिकेम वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट सायंटिस्ट ऑफ दिस सेंचुरी. सो हियर लाइज द ग्रेटनेस ऑफ द सायंटिस्ट स्टीफन हॉकिंग. डियर स्टूडेंट, now look into the next paragraph of this lesson. So I am going to read the next paragraph. An average child, Stephen grew up to be a normal teenager, full of mischief and lots of love for music and mathematics. Even though his father wanted him to study medicine, he was bent on studying Even though his father wanted him to study medicine, he was bent on studying mathematics. The University of Oxford at that time did not have a course in mathematics, So he opted to study physics instead. So first of all, tell me, how was Dr. Stephen Hawking as an average child when he was teenager? When he was teenager, how was Dr. Stephen Hawking as an average child? एक average child म्हणून तो कसा होता? Yes, you are right. As an average child, Dr. Stephen Hawking was a normal child. He was not suffering from any disease when he was a child. लहानपणी त्याला कसलाच आजार नव्हता. He was a normal child. He was not suffering for any disease. Another question is that what did he love when he was a child? And the answer is, when he was a child, he loved music and mathematics. He loved music and mathematics. But what was the desire of his parents, or especially what was the desire of his father? त्याच्या वडिलांची इच्छा काय होती? What did his father want him to study further? But his father wanted him to study medicine. Dr. Hawking loved music and mathematics, but his father wanted him to study medicine. But Dr. Stephen Hawking has went to study mathematics, and his father sent him to the University of Oxford. And at that time, the University of Oxford at that time did not have a course in mathematics. And so, Dr. Stephen Hawking had to choose physics instead of mathematics. Okay, did you get it? Now, the next paragraph. At the age of 17, Stephen started noticing that he was becoming increasingly clumsy and even fell down a couple of times for no reasons. This perplexed him, and he went to see his family doctor, who diagnosed him as suffering from an extremely rare disease, ALS or LOU, Gehrig's disease, that affects the nervous system and eventually weaknesses all the muscles of the body. Stephen says that even as a child, his muscles coordination was nothing to write home about. He recollects, means remember, that his handwriting would send his teacher into a fit of frenzy. Nor was he inclined towards sports. Nevertheless, this disease came as a bolt from the blue. Here are some new words are here. Clumsy means awkward or incompetent. Perplexed means confused. And fit of frenzy means great annoyance. So now let's look into the meaning of this paragraph. So what happened in the life of Stephen when he was 17 years old? When Dr. Stephen Hawking was 17 years old, what happened? When he was 17 years old, he started noticing that he was becoming increasingly clumsy and even fell down a couple of times for no reason. काय लक्षात आलं त्याला? he started noticing that he was becoming clumsy and even fell down a couple of times. एक दोन वेळा तो अचानक पडला without any reason. Clumsy means awkward, incompetent, and he noticed that he was incompetent and awkward, and he again noticed that he fell down a couple of times without any reason. And this thing perplexed him, means confused him. आणि ह्या गोष्टीने तो गोंधळून गेला की आपल्याला असं पडायला काय झालं, का झालं, विदाउट एनी रिझन. And that thing confused him, and he went to his family doctor. And what did his family doctor diagnosis? फॅमिली डॉक्टरनी काय डायग्नोसिस केलं, काय निदान केलं? What did his family doctor diagnosis? And his family doctor diagnosed him as suffering from an extremely rare disease. Extremely rare disease, ALS or LOU, Gehrig's disease, that affects the nervous system and eventually weaknesses all the muscles of the body. Okay? Tell me some answers again from this passage, friends. How was Dr. Stephen Hawking's handwriting? How was Dr. Stephen Hawking's handwriting? From this para, you came to know that, Sangat, you came to know that Dr. Hawking's handwriting was not so good. He recollects, means he remembers that after looking his handwriting, his teacher would go into a fit of frenzy. Fit of frenzy means great annoyance. Very angry at him after looking at his handwriting. That means his handwriting is not so good. And what was Dr. Hawking interested, or was Dr. Hawking interested in the field of sports? Was he interested in the field of sports? No. Dr. Hawking was not inclined in sports. He was not interested in sport. But this disease came as a bolt from the blue. A bolt from the blue means a sudden unexpected shock or sudden unexpected surprise. But it is shocking surprise. हादरवून टाकणारी अचानक त्याच्या जीवनामध्ये घटना घडली. So this disease was very sudden or unexpected shock for Dr. Stephen Hawking. Okay, did you get the meaning of this paragraph? So friends, this is the first part of this lesson. Now, next part of the lesson will be in the next video. Bye.